Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we need to have a serious talk. I want to go ahead and address right off the bat. I titled this video, "Movies nowadays are too long." I'm just gonna start off and say right off the bat, some movies that are 3 hours long deserve to be 3 hours long. Flowers of the Killer Moon, I'm sure, was an incredible movie. It had a lot of storytelling aspects and very important messaging behind it. It needed to be 3 hours long. That makes sense to me. The movie Oppenheimer that came out last year was about 3 hours long. Really good movie. You really needed to feel that world, feel the weight of the shoulders that Cillian Murphy's character has on him. And in order to do that, you need to spend the time with the characters and really be down in the trenches dealing with the kind of stress and mental pressure that he deals with. So there are some movies that have came out in the last couple of years that are long, that should be long, that deserve to be long, that it makes sense that they are long. However, movies in general are too long right now. And the reason I'm saying this is because in writing, there is something called the perfect story. And usually when you're trying to create the perfect story, you want to leave out as many details that aren't as important as possible. And you really want to just give people here's everything that's important. If it's not that important, leave it as a deleted scene, cut it on the cutting room floor. It does not need to be in the final cut of the movie. And I feel like there are a lot of movies that have come out this year and last year and around, the last couple of years that are 2.5 hours long that could have comfortably been 2 hours long. And then same thing with, there's a lot of 2-hour long movies that could have comfortably been about 90 minutes. So today we're just going to be talking about movies in general and talk about why I feel like they got to a point where they feel like they need to be longer and what they should do to make them shorter. So that being said, let's dive into this. Okay, so for starters, I want to talk about why I think Hollywood believes that making movies longer nowadays is doing them a favor and why they think it's a really good thing to make 3+ hour long movies. So for this, I want to kind of talk about something that is like a very prestigious thing in the movie world, the billion-dollar movies. In the last couple of years, there's been like this really big movement for a movie is not good unless it hits $1 billion in the box office. It's been like a new line drawn for if you want to be considered a good movie, you want to be considered a movie that is actually a blockbuster, you need to hit that $1 billion mark. And starting in 2018, there was a very, very big movement where a lot of the movies that were hitting that $1 billion mark were 3 hours long, give or take. We had Avengers Infinity War. I'm pretty sure Infinity War and Endgame both hit the $2 billion mark as well. And those movies are both about 3 hours long, right? So you have those two movies. Very, critically acclaimed. As far as like superhero movies go, these are some of the best rated superhero movies of all time. They're 3 hours long. And a lot of people showed up to the box office in big numbers to go watch this movie, right? That teaches Hollywood a couple things. One, people are okay with movies being 3 hours long. And for two, people will definitely go to a theater to see a movie that is 3 hours long. I realize those two things I just said are the same thing. So let's pretend that was one point. But it's kind of teaching that, Hollywood execs, okay, we can make movies that are longer. People are going to actually go pay to see movies that are longer. Another thing that it showed them is that movie theaters will make more of an effort to put more showings on if a 3-hour movie is actually successful. What I mean by this is, movies like Killers of the Flower Moon, which released last year, I'm going to keep using that as an example because it was a 3-hour long movie. That movie came out. It wasn't selling a bunch of tickets or whatever. Not a whole lot of people really wanted to see it unless you're a big cinema buff or you're like me, you have a YouTube channel where you talk about movies. So when that movie came out, they could only show it like 3 times in a day because it's 3 hours long. It takes 3 hours. They need to have like 20-minute breaks in between so that people can clean up and, get things all set for the next showing. They can't have that playing constantly. 2-hour movies, you put it in the cinema, it can play about 8 times in a day, something like that. That's too much. Hold up, 8? Yeah, because that'd be 16 hours. That's wrong. You get a 2-hour long movie, you can play it at least 6 or something times, right? But 3-hour long movies, you're having problems where you're having to create very strict times where people can go see these movies because they're long. They're going to be, they're going to take a toll on the movie theater for having to have these taking up valuable theater time, So whenever movies like Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War came out and a bunch of people were going to see them, they started opening up more theaters to play these 3-hour long movies, and they started basically making it so that they could only play so many movies in a day, whereas before they were able to do probably like 20 or so more movies a day because they didn't have these many auditoriums playing 3-hour long movies. And I think that started a movement where Hollywood's like, yeah, we can make our movies longer. Everyone's going to be okay with that. Everyone's going to love that. So we had those two, right? Another one, this one wasn't theatrically acclaimed, but I was talking about superhero movies that were, I meant it wasn't theatrically released, but this one wasn't theatrically released, but it was very critically acclaimed, and it was 4 hours long. Zack Snyder's Justice League, his version of the Justice League movie, it came out. A lot of people really loved it. A lot of people said it was definitely worth the 4 hours. A lot of people said, oh my God, this is peak cinema. And once again, Hollywood XX hear that, and they're like, okay, 4 hour long movie. People enjoyed it. We could definitely do this. We could do this again. I think the year after that, we have Avatar: The Way of Water comes out. This movie, once again, 3 hours long, hits $1 billion. So I'm thinking that somewhere within these couple of movies, Hollywood XX all over the board were looking at this and saying, longer movie equals more money. Longer movie equals more money. Longer movie equals more money. And now a lot of movies are starting to be longer than they need to be. And that is driving me insane. But because I am a woman in STEM, because I am a man in STEM, I like to solve problems. I don't like to just address a problem and be like, oh my God, Hollywood, stop making long movies. You got to quit doing that. So I am also going to be talking about things they should do to potentially make movies shorter. So for this, I did kind of want to give a little bit of an example. There's been a couple of movies that have came out this year that have done a really good job with just throwing you into the movie. I saw Dune Part 2 a couple of times in theaters. I really enjoyed it. One of my favorite things about it was this is a part 2. It knew it was a part 2. It did not waste any time introducing us to the characters and kind of doing a previously on thing, which a lot of part 2s would do. They would typically have a 10-15 minute part in the beginning of the movie, which kind of just reminds you of, okay, this is this thing that happened. This is that other thing that happened. No, they started off right where the story needed to take off, and they let you discover what the characters are up to, what the characters are experiencing, what they're going through. And I really enjoyed that. Something that I think a lot of movies nowadays are struggling with is they're spending the first 10-15 minutes of the movie fully introducing characters and relationships in ways that we don't need them broken down for us. For example, I do want to give some of the really, really bad horror movies that have come out this year as an example, because some of my favorite horror movies are some of the shorter ones that have came out in the past, and they did a much better job with just letting us meet the characters as is. But specifically, the movies that I want to talk about, Blumhouse, you guys are killing me. The Night Swim and the movie Imaginary. These are two horror movies that have released this year that I feel like arguably could have been significantly shorter. Another one, the movie Strangers Chapter 1. I'm not going to give you guys the same examples for that one because I think that entire movie should have just been a short film that was 12 minutes long because that movie was terrible. But for those two Blumhouse movies that I mentioned, they spend the first 10-15 minutes of the movie not setting up any horror elements, not setting up any what's it called? Okay, there's going to be this weird spiritual thing that's going on. They spent it introducing us to a family that is painfully uninteresting. In the movie Imaginary, they're introducing us to this weird father, stepmother, weird vibes, and the daughters aren't really, liking their stepmother. They think that she's weird. She's making a weird little what's it called? Child's novel, and she's creating the main character as a terrifying little spider creature. Really weird. She just does not seem like a likable character at all. And I don't know why they were let's spend more time with this character because everyone's gonna love her. No, she was terrible. She was rough. It was painful to watch. But something that I don't like about it is they spent 15 minutes with them just moving into this new house, talking about why moving into this house is going to be so great, talking about, okay, there's so many opportunities, this is a great street to live on, and then just kind of creating this dynamic of the stepmother and the teenage daughter hate each other, and the daughter misses her actual mother, and all these different things, and it spends so long telling us who these characters are instead of showing us who these characters are. I actually kind of liked the Imaginary movie once we got into the last 20 minutes of the movie, and these characters are going through some traumatic experiences together, and they're actually building relationships more naturally. And I feel like that's where this movie falls short. This movie should have started off with them moving into this house, right? That's okay, that's fine. But immediately noticing, there's something off about this place. Something about this just doesn't feel right. This, kid who's been relatively shy and really missing her mother, all of a sudden is really happy and she's playing with this imaginary toy or whatever, and everything seems to be going great, right? And what bothers me about it is it should have started with that immediately. It should have, had the characters be set up while the events of the movie are taking place, because we could have understood that, oh, this is the stepmother, based off of the way she was reacting to the bad things that are happening in the movie. And oh, we can understand that the older sister and the stepmother are having a little bit of conflict, because whenever the young kid starts having, this imaginary friend, the older sister is like, oh my God, this is all okay. And the stepmother's a little bit like, this is a little bit concerning. And they could have feuds and bicker about that. We don't need to spend the first 15 minutes setting up those relationships when you could just show us those relationships in the context of the movie. So that's one of the main things that's killing me, that are making these movies incredibly long, and they don't really have to be. And I feel like just start your movie where the story starts off. I feel like you don't need to give us this super long introduction to these characters. We'll eventually meet the characters and we'll learn more about them as the movie progresses. We don't need to be spoon-fed information about our protagonist. But yeah, that's one of the main things I wanted to talk about. And then, okay, sorry for that really awkward pause. I thought I had something else to say, but I'm completely blanking on it right now. So one of the last things that I do kind of want to say to kind of wrap this up, overall, movies are meant to be storytelling. I understand that in a lot of places, you think of film, it's an art, right? And you want the director's vision to be clear. You want them to be able to say everything that they want to say. You don't want to have to leave things on the cutting room floor. However, smaller runtimes sometimes make for significantly better movies. And I just wanted to say that I think that these movies are getting ridiculously long, and it is starting to drive me insane. And one thing that I really wanted to say, bring back montages. I feel like I haven't seen a good montage in a movie in a really hot minute. I feel like Deadpool and Wolverine just gave us a really good one. But other than that, montages seem to be like not as prominent of a thing anymore. And it was such a good way to kind of like introduce a bunch of characters in a short period of time. If you've watched Zack Snyder's Rebels of the Flower Moon, that's not it. Oh God, what is it called? Rebel Moon? I think it's just called Rebel Moon. The Zack Snyder Star Wars franchise that he's been working on, the majority of that first movie literally felt like it should have been a montage. So yeah, bring back montages. That'd be awesome. I'd really appreciate that. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to say in this video. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out and listening. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. And if you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow, bow, bow.